And so we return to the best league the world has ever seen other than China. The LEC. Home to incredible talent, all-star teams, peerless analytical prowess, and really, really great podcast hosts. The most handsome, charismatic, Come on, Daniel. What?
It's fine, Yamato. You're doing great.
Daniel's here.
You're doing great. I like that line a lot. That last line was really good. But can you just skip to the last part of the script?
The moment you've all been waiting for, Euphoria is back, baby.
Welcome to the premiere of Euphoria Season 5. We're joined today by Yamatocannon and Froskurinn. And before we talk about kind of the meat and potatoes of this podcast, which is our top 20 list heading into spring, I thought it would be good to kind of remind people about a little bit about what happened in the off-season. And most important to me are the names that we've lost, because they are dead to us now. And it is Broxah, Jizuke, Soaz, Kabe, Ignaz, a few other guys leaving too, Mowgli. But I was curious who stood out most to both of you. Who are you going to miss the most? Who are you most surprised that left?
Honestly, surprised, I guess, Kobe. I wanted to keep Kobe after that wonderful year in Splice. I think it was time to even grow further. But he wants money. That's cool.
I think there's also kind of this idea of, okay, so hear me out. If you want to win the LEC, you either have to be on Fnatic or G2 at this point. Like, let's be honest, no other team is going to ever lift a championship. So if you can't be on one of those rosters, is it better to be on a mid-tier LEC team, or is it better to be on a top-tier LCS team where you get the buyout? Theoretically, you get a spotlight, you still get some of that competitive integrity, and you get to go to Worlds. And if you look at that TSM roster, because I would have said outside of that, unless you're on TL, no. But Broxah goes to TL, so I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Kabe going to TSM, and with the changes that the TSM roster has made, I'm like, that also makes sense. If it was any other North American team, like an Evil Geniuses, sorry, Jizuke, it wouldn't be great. But because it's TSM and how stacked the roster is, I'm like, okay, I can see it.
Honestly, I think even with Jizuke, I would echo the sentiment. I think when it comes to paycheck, I guess Soaz, he has a rough year in Misfits, so maybe his market value is not as high. But I think people shouldn't judge him based off of that. Like, I think the Immortals roster doesn't look too exciting. I think Jizuke on EG, based on what I've heard, the rumors, and also how me talking to him, I think that team can be like a contender. Maybe not break top 2, but maybe break top 3, top 4. And Broxah and Kobe for sure. I think they couldn't have gotten better teams over here in Europe.
I think, unfortunately for Jizuke, it was just really hard to move around mid laners. No one really did move mids, and so I think it was actually much easier for Broxah and Kabe just being jungle and AD position. Because I think when you look at Jizuke and Soaz, I agree with what Yamato's talking about. Maybe market value came into it. I heard some rumors that, if Soaz is shopping around for teams and just no one will buy out because no one changed top laners, then of course you're going to go over to North America, try to sharpen up your skills, and then hopefully make a bounce back. I think that's probably what Soaz is thinking. So hopefully we'll see these names again, but I can kind of understand some of the moves. I don't think it was just ka-ching payout day.
Yeah, it makes a decent amount of sense. I'm curious, who do you feel like was the biggest loss for the scene? Is there anyone that we're really sad to lose? Brox immediately comes to mind, fan favorite, generally had some really monster performances.
Jizuke and Kabe were really hard to lose. I think Jizuke, unfortunately, and I know Yamato can talk more about this, he didn't have the greatest 2019 year, health reasons, trying to figure out kind of a new system in jungling. But he was top 3 mid, and until the very end he was top 4 right there. And I think everyone was looking at Jizuke it's his time to shine, he can do it, and just had some of these hurdles. And so it's kind of feels bad to see him kind of blow out in the way that he did when he was such a phenomenal player for so long. And I have no doubt that if he was still here in 2020, the conversation would be Jizuke still in running for being top 4.
I think when it comes to Jizuke, knowing him so well personally, I think the bottom line is this was a big growth year for him. Even in the interview he did with ESPN, you can see how different he looks. The man has made a complete transformation in terms of how he takes care of himself and how he approaches the game, and has improved on many of his flaws, kept a lot of those strengths, and I think 2020 is going to be his best year ever. I think when I think of a loss in terms of a player leaving a region, it's usually did these players peak? And when I look at some of these players, I felt like they've had the best year of their career has to offer so far, like Broxah when he went to the World Finals, or Soaz, for example. He's had so many great years. He still would be good. I'm not saying he's going to kind of be washed up, but I think when I look at Kobe and Jizuke, I think they haven't peaked yet. And the worry is always like, are you going to North America and are you going to kind of stagnate your own growth? That's always the question mark.
It's tough because there's not a huge track record of European players going over and getting better. And people will reference the Bjergsens and the Jensens, but to me, their careers before NA were so short that it's really hard to make any kind of definitive statements there. But a lot of names to lose in the offseason. Happy for NA that they get so many of our wonderful personalities. A little sad for us. But of course, as we continue through the podcast, we are simultaneously building a new set at this moment. So bear with the sounds of drills and maybe occasional shouts in German in the background. I won't be able to translate. Hopefully no one nail guns through the hand. We'll give you the play-by-play if it does happen. But on the other side of the coin, we have a ton of new names coming in. And that's like, I think we have 13 new players if you count...
15.
15?
Yeah.
I thought it was 13 including Arome, if you count Arome.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I literally went on LoL Esports Wikis and counted. So I could be wrong. There could be like names on the bench that I haven't counted.
There's names on the bench. There's a good article that was running around Reddit that was talking about the 15 rookies coming into the LEC.
There's also a plane flying overhead, and I don't know if people can hear this, but
flying overhead or parking in the
assortment
stadium?
of sounds that are going to be coming into the back of this. Sorry if you're exclusively in podcast land. But honestly, like this is the week that I look a lot at new players, so I'm not necessarily as versed, but I'm curious if there are any names that really stand out to you guys as people that like fans should be keeping their eye on as we move into week one. Anyone that you really think is like a front runner, maybe to start contesting top 5 in their role.
I think the biggest judgment we can take away from what I've been scouting is just solo queue. I've been looking at the players that have been tearing it up the most. The one that I'm personally the most excited for is Comp. Comp on Vitality. I think this guy has the potential to be super, super good. I think also Karzi. I think
he got pushed into only playing mages. That's the thing with Comp, though, is that he has a reputation of going for the mages in the bot lane because he tried to go toe-to-toe on the ADCs coming through like EU Masters and even his ERL league and just couldn't hang with the top talent of that league, never mind the LEC. So I think that's the issue with Comp, that while he has kind of that pocket of going for like the mage picks, I haven't seen him really start popping off on if we do rotate back around to like the Misfortunes, the Lucians, and the Varises.
I think, the main thing that I'm taking my conclusion from is just solo queue and just spectating and looking at how they maneuver themselves against the LEC players. And I think, when I looked at a lot of the regional leagues, I think they can be quite deceptive because I think a big part of how players are being judged before they enter the LEC for the first time is also how they perform against other pro players. Because the opinions of pro players in the major leagues are usually the ones that are the deciding factors, unless you're maybe like Mad Lions, where everything is kind of handpicked, and I don't think Humanoid had that much input. I think when it comes to, for example, Vitality, Jack Troll, I think he made that choice when it came to Comp, and he was very supportive of this. And I think there is two kind of sources of information that you can take away from.
I think... for me, the Misfits roster, and I'm going to butcher his name, so I greatly apologize. Razork?
Razor K.
Razor?
I'm calling him Razor K until we figure out how to actually pronounce it.
The jungler of Misfits. I watched him throughout the EU Masters, and effectively a lot of these rookies that are coming to the LEC, people looked at the ERL leagues, they looked at EU Masters, and they just gutted the top rosters. Giants, Vodafone, BIG, and Mouse Esports in particular, and then just like stole all of those players and threw them onto rosters. We have a lot of jungle support duos coming into the LEC now, so like brand new names like Denik and Razork played together previously, and now they'll play for Misfits. And I think this jungler is actually really talented. I think his map awareness, how he reads like state of the map and the decisions that he's making, especially in a meta that is going to be so reliant on having a good jungler and really showcasing you if you're a weak jungler, I think he's someone to watch out for.
And I'm excited. I mean, like we got eyes on the bot lane. I'm always happy to have more junglers. I feel like jungle this season is going to be definitely interesting to watch with all the new changes. But let's jump right into tier lists. So we have, each of us have made a list. Save time. I will merely be your presiding host instead of going into my top 20. Maybe because last time I made such an egregiously horrible list that it took Perks coming on and flaming me to offer me any kind of redemption. But this is our top 20 coming to split is individual expected performance for week 1 specifically. So not predictions for the end of the split, expectations coming into the split. And before we start on number 20 for both of you guys, I'm curious if there's any specifics for your lists. Like, do you look for, like, what are your criteria that you're ranking on? How do you define best personally?
I'm going to be honest, I didn't know we were going to, based off of the performance in the first week.
I was like, oh, shit.
Oh, wait, did you guys not do that? Are you guys just like overall you think best?
I thought of it in the same way that we would do like Worlds. And so it has kind of like that end of year where you're taking in like the history of this guy's career and what you know he's capable of and what you think he will do.
So remember that thing that I said, ignore that. We're doing the history of the career and the what they think we'll do. Well, this is also perfect that you guys are on the same page there because my list is going to be completely different. You're going to be like, why would you rate that guy so high? I'm like, because this guy plays good in week 1. Okay, cool.
So I did champion pool mechanics and flexibility / versatility and playstyle. So those were kind of the 3 metrics that I was looking at.
For me, I kind of judge based off of the competition they have in their role. I took that heavily into account and also what role they're playing. I think there are some roles that have kind of a lot of scarcity in terms of how good is scarcity? Is that a word?
Scarcity. Scarcity sounds way better than scarcity.
It's like, hello to my little friend in this city. No, but definitely the impact of every position that matters a lot. Because like supports, there's not that many of them that were great. Like in Europe, it's like Hillisang, Mickey, and then everybody else. So role dependency.
All right. We have a choice. We can do there will be, I assume, honorable mentions because you can never fit all the 20 players that you feel like don't deserve attention on the list. Do we want to do them at the end after we've done number 1 or do we want to do them at the start?
You know, it's funny 20? When I was like kind of going through. So my strategy was I took each position and then I just grabbed the names of the position. I was like, okay, here, what's a good top laner? I'll grab all top laners that are like worthwhile. And as soon as I got to a name, I was like, I'm sure that there's a better mid laner than this top lane. I moved on to jungle. And then once I had kind of like that list, and I agree, I had like very small support pool, pretty big ADC pool, like things like that. And I counted it all up. I had 21. And I was like, okay, 1 name goes. Let's just try to organize.
Who's your 1 name? Because I know Yamato has a decent amount of shout outs.
Yeah.
The 1 name that I removed was Selfmade.
Oh. Wait, you moved Okay. All right. So honorable mention to Selfmade in the 21 slot. Give yours.
So I have to explain what my honorable mentions are.
Okay.
I felt like these players can definitely, potentially, some of them break top 10, and it didn't feel reasonable to put them in 20 because I think it's either they are up there or they are not on the list at all.
That's a very big difference.
Yeah. But that's why it's so difficult because we have so many rookies coming in, and then we have the rookie Forgiven coming back.
I've never heard of that man.
So my honorable mentions is Forgiven, Gistic, Karzi, and then I have as a second tier of honorable mention is Dreams, Patrick, Cadril, and Comp.
I also kicked Patrick off mine.
Because not on mine either. Not even for week 1 performance in my weird list.
I kicked him off for Han Sama.
Oh, we're going to get into that. Oh, man, I have a lot of opinions already. Okay, number 20.
Why are we starting 20? No one cares about 20. Well, Start number 1.
We get 20 so they listen and they stay for 1.
That's not how that works. They'll actually just scrub.
Speed through.
That's the way.
There's timestamps.
Yes.
Remember last time when we wanted to make a tier list at the start of the season? And you're
Whatever.
Like, why would you go with this format?
Fuck your tier list. It's fine.
And it was a disaster. All right, fine. 20. Number 20. Who wants to present first?
Han Sama.
You?
Humanoid.
Humanoid.
Oh, I had Humanoid at 19.
Wow.
I put Humanoid like pretty like.
I have Han Sama on 19.
Okay, let's talk about 19 and 20 then.
The analysts, the play-by-play.
So okay. I took Han Sama off my top 20 list. So here's my question. Pitch me Han Sama. Why is Han Sama top 20? What do you think makes Han Sama?
Han Sama mechanically was always a very strong player. What I hear that went wrong is that Han Sama is not a very vocal player in terms of how he participates with the communication and the shot calling of his team. When he's next to someone like Wadid, who is also quite quiet, then they lose the plot. They lose some direction and it becomes a very boring, a very flat lane. And they just had various different supports next to him. I think when he had Hiva and DOS, maybe. I think Kiva for sure. Suddenly you started to see some of that old Hansama come to life. And now that he has a guy like Vander next to him, I'm like, this is perfect. Vander will puppet master Hansama. All he needs is a little Roomba vacuum that will fill up that CS and then just be that mechanical beast that we know that French ADC can be.
You lost me on the Roomba point. Like, I'm not entirely sure what the Roomba...
You
How did he
hoover
play
up
with
CS,
Wadid? Hoover up
and you
CS.
clean it all up.
Didn't play with Wadid. Who are you thinking of?
Ignar.
Ignar.
Yeah. I think once again the solo queue point. I've been seeing how well he plays together with Vandal, and bot lane is usually like the lane that you can rate the easiest because most dual bot lanes they just dual queue. They dual queue and they play. And I agree with the sentiment that together with Vandal, that's a very deadly and lethal combination. I think Hansama mechanically has always been super good, and I think the market value of him definitely went down with the whole Misfits
He's bang for your
ordeal.
buck.
And I think it's a definitive upgrade if you look back at what Rogue had the previous year with Woolite or Hikyu. Or who else did they have?
Don't talk shit about Woolite or Hikyu.
Who cares?
Rogue gets really defensive.
Let them be defensive.
By the
you know?
fact that they
Him at the
benched him
first
immediately.
possible moment.
Anyway.
It's not really a good look. Like they have like the master bandits and they're going to be defensive about their players. No. It's
right.
like,
Anyway.
who cares?
Digress.
Humanoid.
All right. I'm willing to be convinced. I'll just say on the Hansama thing, I'm skeptical. He got cut because at the end of the day, I have put my faith in the Hansama project for like the past 3
He's one of our best Lucian players, and Lucian's real hot right now.
Yeah, but like he's one of the best. Draven was great for a long time, and he was still like bombing in half the Misfits games. Like,
That's because Misfits themselves were bombing. As an
all I'm saying is,
ADC player,
in a vacuum,
what are
I
you supposed to
can't-
do?
It's also number 20. There's
Yeah,
50
it's number-
players. Number 20 is not like, wow, world champion.
Yeah.
You know?
In a vacuum, I don't have faith in Hansama. I'm willing to believe the Vander thing. I'll have to see it. But humanoid, Yamato, what's with humanoid? Talk to me about humanoid.
So-
I'm actually surprised he's so low for a team that did relatively well at Worlds.
So I think he's really good, but on a very specific, like he has a very specific champion pool. Like last year, I think there was Kiana, there was Akali, but then I saw his Corki performance, and he was just running it down. You know, I couldn't believe he won that game when he was playing against Origin because he didn't deserve to win this game. He was getting caught over and over. So I think the right champion, I saw having success as well on, I think, Ryze and maybe LeBlanc. In the right meta, I think is really good, but we never know what we're going to have in the middle of the split. Akali's going to get nerfed off of the earth, you know, she's going to be permabanned. Maybe Kiana's going to get nerfed as well because she deserves it. And then maybe Humanoid is not the same player as we used to. Maybe we have a mage meta and all of a sudden Larson goes up in value because of it. So I think he's too meta dependent for me to put him higher.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think certain matchups, when he's not comfortable in a champion, it really shows because he loses matchups in the mid lane that he shouldn't lose. If he does have one of his popping off champions, then suddenly Humanoid is that hype X factor that we were always talking about on broadcast, and it's just kind of that inconsistency.
Yeah. I mean, as a note, like one of the things that I always... I didn't think as much about kind of the champion pool thing, but he died a lot alone, isolated over the course of Worlds. 27.
His ability to read map state isn't the strongest, and so when the map opens up and you need him to play a side lane, I think if he's on a champion like Ryze, his mechanics are good enough that he can take the 1v1, but he doesn't have the experience or the veteranship to recognize that he's about to die.
Yeah. 27's a big number. He was only beat out by Wonder, who tied with him, and Vizichachi was at 30 isolated deaths. But that's just
Thank you for my segue into number 18, Wonder.
Number 18.
What?
Number 18, the G2 top laner.
Yeah.
Not high-fiving that.
Okay. All right. Well, we found our first one that we can go deep on.
What's wrong with Wonder?
Okay, wait. What's your 18?
Upset.
Okay, that's also very low.
How dare you dump my boy Upset like
What?
that?
Okay, this is going to be a list. All right. What's the pitch? Why? So first off, what do you think Wonder does well? And then why is he so
Are
low on
you
his
debating that Wonder shouldn't be on the list at all?
No. I would, despite the bad Worlds performance, I put Wonder much higher.
Okay, so I thought for sure that people wouldn't put Wonder on the list, that a lot of top laners would kind of fly underneath the radar and top wouldn't get kind of the respect that it really deserves.
I think top is dense this year, actually.
I just think that we have decent top laners, but we don't have great top laners. And I feel like Wonder was one of those great top laners. The reason why I have him so low is because of kind of his recent performance. I think outside of like the Kled, he wasn't really popping off. That said, knowing what Wonder is capable of, and especially if we're going into a meta where Ornn is such a big pick, and I think Wonder is a fantastic Ornn player, I was like, I didn't expect anyone to have him on the list, but I had to have him, but I couldn't put him up in top 10. And I basically just put kind of inconsistent players beneath him. He himself is also semi-inconsistent, but has the mechanics, the longevity, the champion pool, and the versatility, which is why he's on my list.
So, is it just in general, you feel like top lanes are pretty weak right now in Europe. That Wonder
Don't
top
put
laner
words
for
in my
the-
mouth. I didn't say we're weak. When I was ranking the top laners, I was
it's a
like,
question.
who do I think is the best top laner? I was like, Finn. And then I had Alfari and Cabochard.
Finn is the best
We're
top laner?
going to get into that when we get to that. Okay. All right. So you have very controversial top lane opinions.
I didn't think that was controversial.
So
And then I put Odo and Wonder on there, and then I had like Whippo on the very
this is a
end.
hard part about
So
top
Odo
lane.
Amne is over Wonder.
I didn't rank it like that. When I was just grabbing them, I was like,
These are the ones that you think are like
yeah,
good.
before
Okay.
I just started throwing names away.
Okay. Damn.
Should I explain upset?
Yeah. Okay.
It's
Why
hard
is
to
upset
move on from that.
No, but that's also surprising. So she's surprised us with Wonder, but we're surprised about you with
Really?
upset so low. Yes?
Well-
No? Am I crazy? Am I just an upset fan?
I had upset at 9.
I think when it comes to, I will not say where Wonder is because I think that's exciting to keep in my pocket. No, but when it comes to upset, I think specifically on this team, I think upset as a player was very different when he was on Schalke, and I think that's what this roster is very similar to. I think he's not going to be the key point of why OG is going to be a good team or a bad team. I think when I look at the Origin roster, I think Alfari had a really, really insane year on a team that was pretty bad, honestly. And I think when it comes to Origins next year, when I look at the key players there, it's going to be Nuktak, Xerxe, and Alfari, and I think they're going to be a monster top 3v3. And I don't think Upset's going to be the main reason as to he's going to be good. He's going to be the AD carry you can trust at later parts in the game, but I don't think he's going to create any too exciting opportunities. I think also the detriment here is that he is now playing with a support that I don't think is going to be that great in terms of how much they're going to accomplish in lane. I think Origin is going to be full topside focus. They're going to be made or broken through this.
Interesting. So more of like what his role, what his capacity is in the team.
Yeah,
Which you kinda
Schalke
said.
last year for sure 9 because he was just winning games and Schalke was winning a lot of games and Upset was the main cause of it and how Schalke played around it. But I don't think it's going to be the same case. And when that's not the case, I think he's going to be very serviceable. He's going to do well in team fights. He's going to do his job. And when I'm looking at my list and the players that are beyond that, those are the players that can be really break out and really take away.
I think it's a bit of a hard pill for me to swallow. Like the context you're giving makes sense, but in the context of like best players, I think it's a little bit weird. But I just think that you have a different criteria for this, and so I'm just curious what that looks like, and if there are any names later on your list, higher up on your list that I wouldn't have normally considered that changes when you're factoring in out of this kind of this team dynamic that you've kind of added to your list. I want to do 14 to 17 in a block.
In a block.
Once again, I want to talk about, because apparently we didn't think 10 to 1 was going to be interesting, but apparently 10 to 1 is about to be the biggest fiesta of all time. So if one of you just wants
want
to
14 to 17 or 17 to 14?
17 to 14 in that
Okay,
order for
I've-
dramatic effect.
Nukduck, Cabochard, Alfari, Inspired, and
In that order?
yeah,
So Nuke Duck is 17,
yeah, and then it's Cabo,
Cabo,
and then it's Alfari.
and then Inspired.
Yeah.
I have Inspired, Vander, Larsen, Whippo.
Inspired, Vander, Larson, Whippo.
So that's my 17 to 14.
Okay, so immediately, so you both have, oh my God, you both have Inspired here, which I'm curious about. So Inspired is a guy that when people talked about him a lot last year, he seemed like the smart jungler. I didn't always see it in, let's say like simple outputs. Like he didn't always have the highest K plus A. He wasn't always like the big KDA player. He
I
wasn't
think his
always,
champion pool was an issue. Unless he got
Olaf
the
one
Olaf, he couldn't be as effective as he needed to on the map. So I'm hoping that Inspired will find like another pick. Olaf is very strong in the meta right now. So in terms of champion and playstyle flexibility, that's why he's kind of like middle of the pack. But in terms of raw talent in making decisions around the map, reading state of map and recognizing what he wants to do, and in a 2020 jungle meta, which is again much more punishing, and that you need to know exactly what you're going to do when you're going to do it. Because if you fall behind, you're screwed. I think that boosts Inspired up, because otherwise I would have put him slightly lower. Like I still think he deserves to be on a top 20, but it's that I think he's smart enough and has the talent that he will be just underneath the great junglers for this 2020 split.
I feel like there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to Inspired. I think the champion pool issues were definitely addressed, and I think as Rogue progressed throughout the season, the whole Olaf one-trick thing was kind of forgotten. And I'm also judging based on what I saw in scrims and practice. Whenever we faced Inspired, he had a lot of creativity in terms of how he was ganking. He was very well aware of the the part of the map that he really needed to impact, and he found ways to do it. Basically, it was like a race. Okay, they want to screw us over here in bot. We want to impact bot, and he did it in very intelligent ways. And also at the same time, there was very, very little 2v2 mid lane, and I think together with Larsen, he played super, super well. So I think in terms of game knowledge and understanding, that's super good, and mechanically can also play. Like, for example, we had this big problem for a lot of junglers last year was when Kiana was meta. All of a sudden, these junglers, they were trying to tell everyone, like, these champions are not good, but they were really, really unbalanced, and it was just that kind of junglers coming together, just trying to agree that we shouldn't play these junglers because they're too hard. And then it was like maybe Xerxes played it, and then we saw like Broxah playing Silas, and it was just like, what are you doing? And I think Inspire doesn't have this issue, so I'm hyped for his growth.
Nice. As we're kind of like moving a little bit faster through, there's obviously a lot of names to hit and a lot of names to talk about, but I'm curious how much these names show up in the future. But I do want to touch kind of briefly on Nukeduck as the final one before we move on here, just because this is a guy that I think is going to vary wildly depending on whose tier list you look at, because either people like have the faith in Nukeduck to be consistent top.
I don't think it's faith. People just, it's hard to understand what Nukeduck does well to layman's terms because he isn't the flashy guy as much as he needs to be. It's really obvious to players or to an audience when they're looking at Humanoid and Humanoid pops off a call, like, that guy's good. Look at him. He's killing people. Look at how he's flashing around the map. Nukeduck just doesn't do that. And so unless you really take the time to watch Nukeduck, a lot of what he does for his team will just not be seen. I view Nukeduck in kind of the same way that Yamato set up the upset discussion, which is on this team, I think he's going to be the serviceable member and do a lot of great things for them, and that Origin will be a top team, and he's like a cog in that machine. I think he's integral to it. Integral? Can't say it.
Integral.
He's important to it.
We're struggling with words.
I know, right? It's really early.
Scar City.
But he's not going to be like that pop-off player. But I think Nukeduck deserves the respect. It's just, it's harder to see. It won't ever appear in the stats what that guy means for the team. But Origin will be a top team, and Nukeduck is a huge part of that.
Core of that. Looking ahead here. I want to talk 13 to 10. We're going quick, but.
Kadrill, Hilly, Larsen.
So number 13, Kadrill. Number 12, Hilly. Number
11, Larsen.
Who's number 10? Did I say 10? Vander, number 10. Okay, give me yours.
Self-made, Nukeduck, Hillisang, Alfari.
You can tell who's a top laner.
Yeah, there's a lot of top laners. So there's a lot of things. Let's start with Vander here. I'm curious why Vander is so high on that.
Rogue almost made it to Worlds, and I'm almost going to put most of that on Vander's impact on the team. I think, again, it's a role that's super hard to judge because you can't see a lot of what supports are doing unless they're being Mickey and Hilly and they're running around on pikes and just like slamming kids. But I think Rogue's macro movements, especially in the mid game once the towers go down, their ability to find picks to create uneven fights and then kind of snowball that into objectives, changed overnight as soon as Vander was on the roster. So I'm going to give him the communication, the shot calling presence. And then I think his mechanics are clean enough that he can still compete serviceably in the LEC as a support, and now it's his test. I think Vander hasn't gotten a lot of the respect that he deserved for a long time, and maybe I'm trying to overcompensate for it, but I think Vander is going to be really important. Rogue will be a top 4 team, and if Vander wasn't on the team, they wouldn't be a top 4 team.
Okay. It's always hard for me because like the big brain player leader kind of arguments always feel difficult. It doesn't always feel as immediately tangible. When you're right, like
think of him as like kind of how people used to think about Mithy, I guess, if you're having a hard time swallowing this top 10 Vander pick, because that's kind of how I view him right now.
And Yamato, what's your thoughts on Vander specifically?
I think when it comes to Vander, I think usually the main criticism towards him is the fact that usually he has a small champion pool, not a smart champion pool. It could be smart in some cases too. But and I think on this team, there's not going to be like enough room for a team to be like, okay, let's ban 3 champions of Vander and then attack that. Because right now the support meta, I doubt that it's going to change too much. We're going to have Alistar, Leona, Nautilus, Braum, the 4, not the Trinity, but the quad of supports that everyone's going to play. And I think that's perfect for Vander and what he wants to do within the team. And I think also the history of Vander in terms of how well he lanes and how well he meshes together with Hans Sama right now, I think is a really big deal. And I'm really I'm super hyped on Hans Sama Vanderbot lane, honestly.
Are you both just like feeling that? I'm so skeptical.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I want to believe in it because it would be such a cool story for Rogue to suddenly have this powerhouse bot lane, but like, I don't know. I'm holding back. I'm not ready to dive in.
I don't think like Vander and Hans Sama are gonna come out and just like start popping.
Yeah, I mean,
in
like,
bot lane.
yeah, you haven't credited Vander. You literally said he's not the Mickey Hillisang. I understand what I'm getting here. I'm getting role players. That's fine.
Yeah, they're gonna get out of lane even or slightly ahead, maybe slightly behind, and then start popping kids.
All right, Jacob.
I guess Nuktak, I could give my opinion on Nuktak.
Yeah,
I have a bit of a higher ranking for
You
him.
hold him in high regard. Yeah, because Frost said he expects him in the same way that you did with Upset to be that role player. Do you expect Nuktak to be that carry then on this OG lineup?
I think the big issue with Nuktak has always been how well he communicates with his jungler. I think there was a time where Nuktak was very successful. That was more recent, and that was with Shook on Vitality. And I think Shook is kind of does his own thing, and you kind of follow and stick around. And I think now coming into Origin, I think Xerxes can definitely take the role of taking charge of what needs to happen, because I think he's done that with lesser players and has made it work with lesser players. Whether Xerxes was playing with Niski or with Humanoid, he always made the 2v2 look very strong. And I think that comes down to Xerxes. And I think Nuktak's biggest weakness is always his communication skills, and also when it really matters. Because he's the type of person that, if he's in a lane matchup that needs to be affected by a jungler, and he needs a specific timing, needs specific help, and needs this specific something to pressure, he's not the one to call for it. And when it comes to what needs to be done in terms of game knowledge and how he plays mechanically, is always really insane. But what makes the perfect mid laner is the mid laner that can take all of these resources to himself, like a Caps, like a Perks, and at the same time perform mechanically. Because strictly, if Nuktak played a 1v1 tournament, you can't count him out. He would be really insane in terms of mechanical play against the mid laners. That's why all the mid laners respect him, because mechanically, really insane. But in terms of communication, needs some work. And I think Xerxes bridges this gap.
Be good. Honestly, I'm always excited to see what Nuktak does. He's a highly variable player. At worst, he's sitting in lane doing nothing. At best, he's playing Zed and styling on kids. So always someone I'm interested to watch. I want to hit number 9 and number 8. Then we'll take a quick break and we'll be back for top 7 after that. So 9 and 8.
I can go first, I guess.
You go first.
I have Nemesis and then Caps.
Okay, who do you have? Who do you have, Frost?
Oh, I don't want to get flamed. I'm so sorry. I put Forgiven and then Upset.
Okay, you don't want to get flamed. All right. Oh, God, where to start? Okay. There's so much to unpack here, guys. All right, so first off, I'll start with yours, Yamato. You have Caps in a new position above Nemesis on your tier list.
Honestly, I would have put Caps a lot higher if it wasn't for him being AD carry. But
I agree with that.
I put Caps a lot higher, and I basically had to keep him out of top 3 because I was like, I can't do it because he role swapped, but this is the greatest player that Europe has.
Because when it comes to Caps, I still think Mickey and Caps, they have a very similar spirit in terms of how they enjoy the game, how they experience the game. And I think there's going to be games where they just completely demolish on their own, playing like Set, Ornn, bot lane, RKOing people out of nowhere, doing some stuff, and I think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be like the bread and butter of G2, because I think it's going to come down to the 2v2 in mid lane, and then eventually Perks is going to go back bottom again where he doesn't think it's a boring role. That's my prediction. But I think there's going to be games where Caps and Mickey just slam people.
Yeah. And your thoughts? You kind of talked a little bit about the role swap, but maybe your thoughts on Nemesis overall? I don't know.
I put Nemesis up higher. I know that you wanted to take a break, but basically...
No, you can go into the Nemesis explanation, because then we don't have to hit him as much in the
for my top 5, I basically took...
Don't spoil the whole 5. Just tell me where Nemesis is.
He's 5.
He's 5. Okay,
and
there you
then
go.
Caps is just underneath him.
Okay.
But again, I feel so strongly that Caps is just the best player that Europe has, and I agree that there's going to be some moments where you're reminded that you're playing against the best player that they have. But I was like, it feels really... disingenuous on a role swap when we just don't have the data necessary, because it could come out and Caps could be the greatest bot lane player that we've ever seen, and he slams kids and this list looks like a fool because he's not number 1. But I was like, I'll pick the players who are the stars in their roles and then put them above, and then I'll put Caps. But like very easily, I can see an argument for Caps being like all over this board, but Caps is always going to be in top 10, always.
Is Nemesis for you then, potentially for both of you, next to Perkz the second best mid laner in Europe right now?
On certain picks and in certain styles. I think the issue with Nemesis is that he got so many resources, and it's really hard to tell kind of where Nemesis starts and where Fnatic begins in terms of the success, because he constantly had multiple people coming into his lane. Now, when you did put Nemesis off into a side lane and he was left to his own devices when he's in his own team fights, I think he's far superior in executing than Humanoid was. Like, Nemesis really did create his own pressure points. He turned team fights around, but like, I like his Cassiopeia. I like his Twisted Fate. He plays a lot of the traditional mages, but it's not the same flexibility that you see out of a champion pool like Nuke Duck or like Caps or like Perkz even brought to a mid lane. So that's like the pros and cons of Nemesis. It's just, I need to see more from him. I want to see more evolution because this guy will be amazing. But right now he's just great.
Last thoughts on Nemesis, Yamato?
I think when it comes to Nemesis, like I have a completely different opinion because I think he got very little resources, like next to nothing. I think
Hilly was in his lane all the time.
I think what it came down to, I think when they played Twisted Fate in mid lane, then they gave a lot of resources. But I think the entire Fnatic roster, the entire Worlds run, their entire best of 5 against G2, 2 of them, nothing was about mid lane. It was Akali versus Sylas, and no one gave a shit about mid lane.
I would agree with that.
It was all about just pressuring into bottom, because this was the only thing Fnatic had figured out to do. And I think when it comes to Nemesis into this year, the biggest question mark was always the reason why this 2v2 mid lane doesn't exist. Is it because of Rockstar? Is it because of Nemesis? And I think I was reserved with putting him higher. I think that he's the second best mid laner we have coming into 2020. I think he's much better than Humanoid because he's not going to run it down on Corki. He knows how to, he understands the map state. He doesn't die to ganks. I think this is very positive. What is the next level? And I think the next level is having a very strong 2v2. I think Selfmade and Nemesis, they have history playing together. I think that's going to work super well. And I'm reserved in putting him higher. I think I could put him higher if I could say for sure this 2v2 mid lane will be very, very powerful, because I think that was the number one issue with Nemesis. And on top of that, I was very critical of his team fighting, because sometimes with Akali, he was 6-0 and you just didn't feel it. Didn't feel it at all. And I think that's also a flaw of his.
For me, I mean, Nemesis is a player that I will always have my eyes on, but I struggle in the same way that Frost does. I think figuring out how much of this is a product of Fnatic. But I will say that I'm optimistic. I think the Selfmade Nemesis duo should be strong. How Fnatic's going to come in week 1, I have no idea, but I think eventually that duo should be strong. You know, those are players that have a lot of experience together and seem to get along well, which I think is a big deal for the Fnatic lineup, kind of how well personal relationships mix and mingle. Frosk, once more, your 8-9.
Oh, I did. Forgiven and Upset. And the reason why I put Upset over Forgiven is that I think that Upset has proven that he has a wider champion pool. I've heard that Forgiven's champion pool is quite narrow right now.
I just need you to give me the quick spiel on why you have so much faith in Forgiven. After that, we'll take a break. We'll come back for top 7, but I just need to know why so much faith in Forgiven.
I spend a lot of time, and I think it's also when I think you put out the list, Yamato will have more top laners, and I'll probably have more ADCs, and I think it just comes down to the roles that I don't know about Yamato, so I'm just making an assumption that we spend the most time looking at. I spend a lot of time looking at bot lane because I just feel that I know the role more intimately. And so I'm always usually much more impressed by ADCs. Back in 2016, I was over in the LPL and we had the best ADCs in the world. And I heard about this guy, Forgiven, who was over in Europe just like cracking skulls. So I took a look at him. I was always very impressed with him. And so if he brings his 2016 self into 2020, like that's a top tier world class ADC. So I'm going to give him top tier world class respect on the list.
I put him number 20. You thoughts on Forgiven?
I think when it comes to Forgiven, I think it's hard to find an in between, because I think Schalke will find a lot of success, a lot of wins because of Forgiven, because I think Forgiven is very good at finding a path to victory. He has his eyes on the Nexus, knows how to get there. If he gets a little lead, he knows how to get there. But the man took a 3-year break. I don't care if he played on Greek teams, he casted Greek tournaments, or played EU Masters, for that matter, but 3-year break. No one has ever done this before. And I think if anyone's going to have remotely any success, it's going to be Forgiven because of how driven and motivated he is. And then the bottom line is Schalke, How are they going to be affected by Forgiven? Are they going to be as driven, as motivated as him? That could be the case. There are some characters there, I think, together, Forgiven and Gilius, they can motivate each other in a way that maybe we've never seen before. But still, 3 years, a lot of the things that were considered unique a long time ago, they're no longer unique. Drive, mechanics, how you pressure in lane, these are things that we can say about a lot of AD carries. And I think the fact that he has no unique kind of things to him anymore makes me skeptical.
Final thoughts, Froskurinn?
Just my sentiment on Schalke is I feel like Schalke are going to kind of be like the benchmark. Not the benchmark in terms of the bottom of playoffs, but it's like if you beat Schalke, then you prove that pound for pound talent-wise, you deserve to be a top team in the LEC. If you lose to Schalke, I don't think it's because they macro outmaneuvered you. It's probably just because they brute force smacked you down. So like, I think Schalke will be that team that decides, yes, you get to be a good team in the LEC. And if you don't touch Schalke, then you are a bottom team and you are not worth the relevant talking point. And I think it comes down to just the raw power on that squad.
Hell yeah. Get me hype for Forgiven. Oh, let's do it. All right, we're going to be back after a quick break. I'm bracing for the Fiesta, the final 7 in the 2020 spring tier list. All right, this is a special segment. We're going to call this one Yamato ASMR, because Yamato's here and we might as well use his sultry voice for the good of the people. So the name of the game is I'm going to give Yamato a prompt, and he has to ASMR through said prompt. This week's theme, things you would say to your ADC to help them recover from tilt. In this case, you're their support.
So just talk, as that's ASMR?
Yeah, you just talk. Just pretend like your AD carry is like really upset, really frustrated, like, oh man, I suck. I can't believe this. This game is so broken. Something's balanced. Like, and then you come in and you got to save the day. You got to get him back on track.
Don't worry, bro. You'll always respawn. Don't worry, bro. He's not gonna TP again. It's a 6-minute cooldown. Don't worry, bro. The Drake is gone now. They're not gonna come bottom again. Don't worry. Don't worry, bro. This is the next game. You can just queue up for the next game. Don't worry, bro. You don't have to play AD carries. Just play a tank. Then it doesn't matter if you die. I know you keep feeding. Maybe you should try a different game, bro. Maybe you should try a different game. This is not working out. Maybe some normal games. Maybe some ARAM. It's okay, bro. Next game will be better.
It's okay, bro. I love it. All right. Here we are. The final 7, the last 7 names remaining on the list. Before the break, we got through players 20 through 8. Now I need to hear the top 7. Let's do them all at once. Just say 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You each do it, and then let's just talk about placement, talk about rating, because I imagine a lot of the names are going to be the same.
Fly, Frosk, fly. Wanna go?
Do we want to go 1 and then, or do you want me to just list the 7?
Why don't we just do 1 through 7? Who's? Let's start with number 1. We can let people digest that. They just got back from the break. Number 1, Jankos.
Perks.
I have Jankos. I have Perks number 2.
I have Mickey number 2.
I have Wunder number 2.
Holy
God. It's a G2 cocktail. All right, let's keep going. Who's number 3?
Perks.
Reckless.
Okay, also have Reckless. Number 4.
Reckless.
Mickey.
Hillisang. Number 5.
Nemesis.
Xerxes.
Wonder. Number 6.
Caps.
Kaboshat.
Mickey X. Number 7.
Cersei.
Jankos.
Upset. Okay. Welcome to the G2 cocktail, folks. Where to even get into this? I guess.
I want to start. So I wanted originally to put Reckless as number 3. And when I first wrote down this list and was just like, okay, I had to come up with a top 20, who would be my number 1? The first name that I wrote down was Reckless. And I was just like, can I justify this? And I feel that in the mechanics, the versatility of play style, the champion pool, that Reckless met all of those regards, and the fact that Fnatic, like, he was so pivotal to their play style. It didn't work unless you had Reckless as your ADC because of his ability to play weak side, because of his ability to pull out the Garen and the Karma picks that were so vital to them in making such a deep run, not just in the LEC, but also at Worlds. And so originally when I made this list, I was just like grabbing hold of the Reckless, and it was only until I had to think, what's going to be the most important role in 2020? Oh, our MVP of summer, I think jungle will be the most important role, will be the most polarizing role. And it was the fact that Reckless, like Yamato was talking about at the very beginning, is in such a crowded field of talented bot lanes that he got pushed down to number 4. But like it was so stacked. I was like, jungle's going to be the most important. The second most important will probably be support. So my 2 are jungle and support for the best team in the LEC.
Okay, let's just go Yamato rather than going through your list in order. Let's talk about your thoughts on kind of Reckless. You have his number 3. I have him number 3. Like,
I just think that right now with Perks and Mickey not playing bot lane anymore, coming into 2020, Reckless and Hylissang are going to be by far the best bot lane. I think they were crazy good last year, crazy good. They made it hard for G2 to beat them, honestly. And I think that synergy that they built up and their understanding of always like squeezing every penny, they don't let you breathe in lane. If you make a mistake, they punish you for it. If you are not playing aggressive enough, they punish you for it. And I think right now they are a very well-rounded bot lane. Past criticism have been addressed when it came to Reckless champion pool. Like he can play any type of style. It wasn't necessarily that Fnatic had to play through bot because there was an issue with playing through bot. They did it because nothing else worked, and that was the thing that gave them the most success. And I think now, coming into this next year, they will be very versatile. Reckless is very versatile. I think he's just a fantastic player.
all right, the next one I think Reckless has been a guy that we just have to keep our eyes on. And I think would you agree, Froskurinn, that like Reckless Hylissang as a bot lane is like expected number 1? At least heading into this.
I mean, yeah, they're the only bot lane that didn't change. Everyone else changed some sort of aspect to it. And G2, obviously, with the role swap of caps and perks.
Then the other one, the question I have is Jankos. Now, Frost, you've already talked about it. He's summer MVP. I agree with Frost in that, like, I think the jungle is a lot more intense. Like, if you're a good player, it's going to show a lot more. And if you're a bad player, it's definitely going to show a lot more with removal of catch-up XP. I'm curious your thoughts on Jankos, Yamato.
So I'm very reserved when it comes to Jankos. I put Xerxes above him because I was more impressed with Xerxes at the World Championship than I was with Jankos. I think
he had a bad tournament.
The main issue with G2, I think, was the early game planning, the idea of what they had to accomplish in early. Sometimes you had those pop-out performances with Jankos on Elite, for example, the first game against Griffin. But beyond that, I think there was a massive issue in terms of... Jesus Christ.
You continue. Go. It's fine. Emergency phone call. It's fine.
Emergency phone call. Okay. So
continue. Talk to me. It's just me and you now.
And then there was the whole Qiyana business. He was playing Qiyana.
Qiyana was awful. That's what I have. I said anything as long as he's not playing. He's number 1. Qiyana was trash.
But then sometimes, the meta shifts and you need to play some specific champions. And there was not a lot of mechanical junglers. And Xerxes still on Qiyana was a monster. And I think that's why I'm putting him above. In terms what he managed to accomplish with the worst team. It's hard to blame anyone on G2. Like maybe it's I thought 2v2 mid lane wasn't really existing. Wunder, Jankos, they had some ganks together, but 2v2 mid lane wasn't there. And I think coming into the next year, Perks and Jankos, they have history with playing together. Funnel, 2v2 mid, I think that's going to be super good, and I still rate him super highly. And I understand there's a world where he's going to be the best jungler. I'm well aware of that.
All right.
Just for those angry YouTube comments, I'm expecting an important visa call. That was not it, but I thought it might be, and that's why I walked away. So Yamato's very important, but me,
what Frost can't handle is listening to criticism of Jankos. He's the best player ever, and don't you dare talk bad about his Qiyana. He was.
I was
learning.
calling him up. I was like, "You won't believe the shit this guy is talking right now."
All right, there's 2 more players that I think are there's a few more players that are really important to hit, but the 2 that I want to hit next in order are Perks and Wunder. And Yamato, I want to start with you again, kind of coming in here, because you have Wunder very, very high. And Frost, you have Wunder very, very low.
I'm surprised that Wunder is that high.
So why is Wunder so high? And once again, as Frost, as you mentioned, a lot more top laners on Yamato's list, a lot more AD carries on yours. But what makes Wunder so good for you?
I think it's very easy to forget how good Wunder is based off of his most recent performances. But I think at the World Championship, Wunder is so goddamn versatile. Between series, he was adapting his champion pool towards the enemy he was playing against. Against SKT, he was locking in champions that scale better. He was locking in Camille into Renekton. It's a bad matchup, but he just picked it because against SKT, you outscale them and you're going to win. That was the idea. Against Damwon, Jace every game because they knew the champion pool of Mr. Nuguri is just Vladimir, Kayle, and Jace. If you take Jace, you're going to have a good matchup, and they just isolated him. I think this versatility is insane. And coming into the next year, I think the meta on top lane is going to be much more cocktail and more open-minded than used to be. We see a lot of Lucian top, there's going to be Set top, there's going to be Tanks top, and I just feel like Wunder can play everything. And I think Wunder as a player, when it came to the best of 5 series against G2, I think he saved them. he saved them. And that's always the case when it comes to G2. When they're stomping games, he kind of trolls around and kind of screws around. You saw him against Cloud9 playing Vladimir, going like 0-5 or some shit. But when it came to the key moments, he had like a Rise performance where he just 1v9s. He had the Kled performance where he 1v9s. That's why I put him so highly, because I think when it comes to top lane, I think Wunder is the one that I would put my money on.
So faith in him getting kind of back into fighting form after...
I don't think back necessarily. I don't think he had that bad of a world championship in comparison to, I guess, Jankos on the team.
You're really just... you think...
I'm sorry, Jankos.
I mean, you got to blame somebody for the failures,
It was not
right?
Jankos Smurf. It was...
Jankos is at fault. Shifting our attention over then to the other really important G2 member, and I think this is the question on everyone's mind, and people are kind of quick to take a side. Is Perkz just right back to the top of mid lane?
I mean, he's been playing a bunch of mid-lane champions, so it's not like he missed any time on like practicing his Syndra, practicing his Yasuo. I think it's about, can he pick up some of the newer reworks that are into that mid lane? Can he get back into the swing of things, of being responsible for communicating with his jungler more and finding those roams, which Perkz was always pretty well known for, like in terms of his laning when he used to be a mid laner. So the assumption is that Perkz will return back to form, and now that Caps is gone, he should be the best mid laner in Europe. But we'll see.
The plan has gone full circle. And I was like, Caps, you're not that good AD. You're going to get benched. We're bringing in someone else.
That was the
and
plan.
Caps
That's
is gonna
perfect.
Get benched. And
It's like, I can't beat
Reckless
this guy.
on G2,
Yeah,
and then
I
everything
just think
is
this
just...
the ultimate strategy for European domination is to take players onto G2, give them their preferred role for a year, then move them out of that
G2
role,
reckless?
and then bench them. And then there's no competition left. Perkz is now undisputed #1 mid laner. Who's the best mid laner in Europe? Probably still Caps. Who's the #1 mid laner? Perkz. He's the one playing. Master plan.
I'm high for Perkz though, man. I think the 2v2 with Jankos is going to be super, super huge. Like, when Perkz came onto the scene, the reason G2 was winning everything was first Trick and then...
They were a
Perkz.
monster duo.
2v2, that was crazy, that
Yeah,
first split.
Trick was like hard stomping every single game.
Yeah.
The Gragas, the Graves. Yeah, I'm ready.
And then they got a bit more timid. They were playing like late game games, whatever.
Yeah, it was weird.
a
The
well-done
Sven and
approach.
Mithy era where it was just like Sven's going to carry and Perkz is going to do something in a side lane maybe. Odd times. It's always exciting to see the iterations of G2. Historic team here. But, folks, there's so many names to talk about on this list, and this is a relatively short podcast, all things considered, to talk about 20 players. So let us know your thoughts on social. We're going to be posting each and every one of the lists, including mine, which we touched on very briefly. And we're going to vote. Whose list do you think is the best? Whose list do you think most accurately reflects your own? #EUphoria Top 20.
Damn it, I should have put Reckless #1.
You put Forgiven so high. You're already getting the clickbait from the fans. You got Vander so high, right? It's going to love you for that. So let us know. There's going to be a post. There's going to be a Twitter poll. If there's a Reddit thread, hopefully. Reddit thread. Engage with us. We'll talk to you about it. You can ask also people on stream or any other platform where you might find them available. All right, that's going to wrap today's special episode. This week we're having 2. So the next episode will be coming back tomorrow at a new time. This will be our normal publishing time, Thursdays at 12 p.m. Central European Time. Of course, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts, Euphoria will be available. Frosk, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I know you got to run, so we'll get you out of here. And also a special thank you to our set construction crew. They're very determined to finish that set, very aggressively finishing that set with every loud tool I've ever heard. That's our show. We'll see you guys tomorrow.